Shout out to the sponsor. 24 hours with JB. Let's talk. So on this particular video, we're speaking about options. In particular, we're dealing with delta, right? We'll dive into gamma a little later, but delta, right? The delta deals with the Greeks of options. Delta is known as the head honcho, right? Delta is at the forefront when it comes to options, especially the Greeks. So delta essentially deals with the price of the options contract, right? Delta gives you the premium change for every $1 move in the underlying instrument. In this particular instance, we're speaking about a stock, right? So Delta's main objective is price. It tells you how much the contract changes off of every $1 move and the underlying. So in this particular example, we have an options contract, right? The current price of the underlying stock is $13, right? The delta, right, which deals with the options premium, right, which is essentially the price of the contract. The delta in this particular example is 0.40, right? And the options premium, right, that's the price of the contract is $2, right? So thus, if you have a delta of 0.40, right, what essentially what that tells you is the options contract is going to increase by 0.40. So what you do is you take the options premium, right, which is the price of the option, which is $2, and you add the delta to that $2, right? That's $2 for the options contract, which is the options premium, plus the delta of 0.40. $2 plus 0.40, which is the options delta, gives you the new options premium, which is what $2.40, right? What that tells you is for every $1 move in the options contract, you get an increase of 0.40, which is why here I have as an example, right? The options premium is $2, right? The delta itself is 0.40. So thus, if the underlying, which is the stock, if the underlying increases $1, right? Now let's say if the underlying price was $13. If that $13 moves to $14, which is a $1 move in the underlying instrument, right? The instrument being a stock in this particular video, the options premium is now $2.40. Reason being, the options contract or the options premium was first worth $2. And since we had a delta of 0.40, we add that delta to the options premium, which is how you get $2.40. In other words, the options premium is $2, the delta is 0.40. Now the options contract or the options premium is worth $2.40. Now, as my professor used to say, tell me which part you don't understand. Okay, so put in the comment section. So also what delta can tell you, right, is the probability of the options contract expiring in the money. We spoke about in the money, at the money, or out of the money in my other video. So go back and watch that to rehash exactly what in the money entails. So thus, if you have an options, if the delta of your options contract is 0.40, essentially what that tells you is you have a 40% chance of the options contract expiring in the money. So that can tell you a lot from a buyer standpoint or a seller standpoint. Of course, the two differ depending on which side of the contract you stand on, right? And if the delta, okay, so the more the delta gets in the money is the more the options contract gets in the money, the more the delta increases. Conversely, the more the options contract goes out of the money, the more the delta decreases. Now, from a seller standpoint, this is beneficial because essentially what takes place is you receive the premium and the options contract expires worthless. Now, that's the ideal situation for an options seller because you don't have to come up with the underlying instrument, i.e., you don't have to come up with the 100 shares due to the options contract expiring out of the money. But you do receive the options premium, right? Which now we go back to the here, OP. The options premium is $2 in this particular instance. So that would be $2 times 100. Why is it times 100? Great question. Each options contract, we're speaking about one options contract, each options contract holds 100 shares, right? That's the underlying instrument. Each options contract is 100 shares. So, in the event that an option expires in the money, right, at a particular strike price, the person on the other end has to essentially come up with those 100 shares. I don't want to lose you all, but that's essentially what an option contract consists of. Now, when you speak about gamma, all gamma is they're cousins, right? Gamma determines the delta's expected rate of change. So in this particular instance, we had $2.40 as the new options premium, right? Due to the delta moving. Now, gamma determines that next dollar move, right? So in our previous example, we moved from $13 to $14 and the delta increased by 0.40. Now, if we have a gamma of 0.5, then we would add that 0.5 to the 240, and now the options premium would be $2.45 due to the second dollar move, right? So let me retrace everything. The first dollar move and the underlying security, delta causes the options premium to increase 40 cents. So now the options premium goes from $2 to $2.40 due to the delta increasing by 40 cents. Due to the delta being 40 cents, it causes the options premium to increase 40 cents, which is now $2.40, right? So in other words, the option contract, it increases. Now the next dollar move, which is where gamma comes in, and gamma is delta's expected rate of change. That new gamma, you add that to the delta as well as the options premium as well. So thus you have the $2 for the initial options contract plus the 40 cents for the delta, right? So that's $2.40. And then the next dollar move, you have an addition, which is the gamma. So let's say the gamma is 40 cents. Does that make sense? Let me just write it down for you so you could see clear as day what I'm referring to. Here we go, right here. So $2. That's the original options contract, right? Options premium. Now, the delta was 40 cents, right? That's your delta, right? So now it gets a little tricky because you have to remember that this is all based off of the underlying security moving. So the underlying security moves from $13 to $14, right? That $1 move causes delta to be added to the options premium. Now, the next dollar move, which will be $14 to $15, that's where you add gamma. And let's say gamma is 5.05 in this particular instance. You add all three of these numbers up, right? And now you have 2.45. This 2.45 or $2.45 represents the options new premium. I see the light is there we go. This new $2.45 represents the options new premium. Does that make sense? Right? Again, the initial options premium was $2 when the options contract initially started. Delta You had a delta of 0.40. Delta increase, so you add that delta to the options premium for the first $1 move. The second $1 move, remember, gamma is delta's expected rate of change. So thus, when the next dollar move occurred on the underlying instrument, which is the stock, that caused gamma to increase as well, or gamma to be added to the options premium as well as the delta. You have gamma here. And now your options premium is $2.45. Questions in the comments section. Heavy on the investments.